Have you ever thought about what started the massive fight known as World War I? Let's go back to the early 1900s. This was a time when Europe was like a time bomb waiting to explode. It was a difficult time with lots of political friendships, military buildup, empire-making, and national pride that tied countries together in a mixed duties and fights. The spark that started the fire happened in June 1914. In Sarajevo, a man named Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was supposed to the ruler of Austria-Hungary, was shot and killed. This murder sent shockwaves across Europe, starting a series of political problems. Countries started declaring war on each other, as countries bound by friendships and agreements were pulled into the fight. This mix of things, along with the sad event in Sarajevo, created a situation that eventually exploded into World War I. So, everything was ready for a massive, brutal fight. The world, as we knew it, was on the brink of big changes. The Western Front was a famous battleground in the war. Here, the terrors of fighting in deep ditches, also known as trenches, were endured by soldiers. The battle quickly became a deadlock, with both sides stuck and unable to advance. Soldiers had to live in these long ditches stretched over miles, grappling with dreadful living conditions. The ground was turned into slushy mud, the noise of guns and cannons filled the air non-stop, and the horrible smell, death, was everywhere. Big battles happened at places like the Somme, Verdun, and Ypres, leading a lot of people dying or getting injured on both sides. Just at the Battle of the Somme, over 1 million people were hurt or killed, an almost unbelievable number. Soldiers had to walk into a storm of bullets and bombs, their lives hanging by a thread. The Western Front shows how harsh and destructive war can be, reminding us of its human cost and damage. While everyone was focused on the Western Front, a large and intense battle was happening on the Eastern Front. Here, the armies of Germany and Austria-Hungary were up against the Russian army. The fight extended from the Baltic to the Black Sea. This battle was unique, not full of trenches, but marked by fast and broad movements across huge areas. Germany and Austria-Hungary, known as the Central Powers, started off strong, making their way deep into Russian land. But soon, they faced the huge size and toughness of the Russian forces. The wide area of the Eastern Front, along with severe winters and issues with planning, really tested the Central Powers. Even against the Russian army, although often with fewer weapons and soldiers, turned out to be a tough enemy. They fought hard and bravely, making the Eastern Front a war of who can last longer. The Eastern Front was a war of size and stamina, showing how big and tough Russia can be. World War I wasn't just fought in Europe. It was a huge war that involved countries from all over the world, like Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas. It was a time when big countries with big dreams fought against each other, and it affected every part of the world. In the Middle East, there was a lot of fighting between the Ottoman Empire and British-led groups in deserts and mountains. Africa was also affected by this war. Fights happened everywhere, from the dry deserts to the dense jungles. Asia was also involved, with fights happening in places like China and the Pacific Islands. So, from the dry lands of Africa to the coastal areas of Gallipoli, World War I had an impact everywhere. The First World War was the first big war where modern weapons were used. The battlefield became a place to test new and dangerous weapons. For example, machine guns could shoot many bullets very quickly, killing many soldiers in just a few seconds. These fast-shooting guns made war more deadly. Then there were tanks, big armored vehicles that could move across dangerous areas without getting hit by bullets or sharp pieces of metal. They helped break the deadlock of fighting from trenches, making a way through the muddy and wire-filled battlefield. Weapons were used too, for the first time. Mustard gas, chlorine, phosgene, these invisible killers made the air itself dangerous to breathe. And let's forget the airplanes, which took the fight to the skies, dropping bombs from above and fighting in midair. These technologies, while changing warfare, caused a lot of destruction and pain. World War I wasn't just a battle between countries, but also between big empires. The big powers of Europe, like the Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, Russian, and German empires, were on the edge of disaster as the war went on. These empires, once thought to be unbreakable, got weaker because of the stress of the war. Many, it was the end. The Austro-Hungarian Empire split into many new countries. The Ottoman Empire, once a powerful player, broke apart, creating the modern Middle East. Russia, in the middle of a revolution, saw the end of the old rulers and the start of the Soviet Union. Germany, beaten and embarrassed, was a faint echo of its old powerful self. The Treaty of Versailles, signed after the war, changed the borders, forever changing the shape of Europe and the world. The war marked the end of a time, changing the shape of Europe and the world. World War I was a terrible event that caused a lot of pain and change. A lot of people, both soldiers and regular folks, died during this time. Many others were hurt, both in their bodies and their minds. The sadness and hurt from the war spread through people's lives, changing their societies. After the war ended, countries had to deal with a lot of problems and changes. Women who had started working more began to stand up for their rights. Artists and writers started showing the sadness and distrust felt by people who had lived through the war. This big war also left a lasting mark on the world. Monuments and events around the globe remind us of the cost of war, honoring those who fought. As we think about the terrible things and losses of World War I, let's try to learn from the past and work for a peaceful future.